I'm Joe Parsons with Cannabis Coast to Coast News, and today I'm very honored to be joined with the author of the best-selling novel One Step Over the Line, Ken Behr. Ken Behr, for decades, led the literal Miami Vice life, and in 1992, that all came to a tragic but rewarding turnaround. So, Ken, until 1992, you had it all. But in the blink of an eye, your life was completely turned upside down. Can you share how the love of your daughter gave you the strength and courage to eventually work for the DEA?
Yeah, that's exactly true. That is the story. I got busted. I had been running drugs for about 20 years, my second time getting arrested. And I'll tell you the story. I was sitting in jail and I was keeping my mouth shut. I wasn't ready to talk to anybody. And the prisoner next to me was lucent white skin, prison tattoos. He had been in jail for in Angola prison for 15 years. And he pulled me aside and he didn't talk much to anybody. He said, "Listen, I know you have a 1.5-year-old daughter. I had a 1.5-year-old daughter when I got arrested 15 years ago." He goes, "You know how many times I've seen her when I was in jail?" I go, "No." He goes, "Once, one time in 15 years." And he said, "The mores and values you're clinging to died a lifetime ago. Look around this jail. It's not who hasn't snitched, it's who hasn't snitched yet." And there's sections of the jail. He goes, "Your co-defendant in that other pod there, he's already ratted," which I probably already knew. And he said, "The one in the other pod, he will, if the opportunity is, you know." He said, "So you need to think about your child, your daughter, and your future." He goes, "So if you do this and you go home and change your life, that's one thing. If you go home and you do this and then you start selling drugs again, then you're nothing more than a rat and a snitch. And whatever happens to you, you deserve." And that was one of the most, out of all the lawyers, and both my lawyers told me, "Look, you have no chance. You're going to jail for 25 years. You better cooperate." But that one guy really changed my life. I had another prisoner one time in my first bust tell me, "Hey," he's a Spanish guy, goes, "Hey, Florida, people die every day." And that also was one of very life-changing bit of advice. Not quite the same. I mean, I'm digressing, but it's funny where you get these life nuggets. You learn to understand death more when you realize people die every day.
Yeah.
Now, in that prison, in the earlier bust, he lived in a world where people die every day because of violence. But moving back to the first question you had, uh, yeah, that one. He also told me to read The Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court by Twain, which I really enjoyed. So there was two things. But yeah, that was it. That was a big changing point in my life.
All right. So, what was it like going in to deep cover and working for the DEA?
Well, it was life changing. I never thought I would ever do that in my life. I mean, I grew up as a professional drug runner from the age of like 16. By 18, I was working for big smuggling groups, flying millions of dollars to the Cayman Islands in Learjets, me and my girlfriend for a day. And by 19 or so, I was living in Jamaica on the run and brought my first load of weed out of 600 pounds of Jamaican lamb's breath, which was kick-ass killer weed. I wish I had some today, even though the weed today is excellent. Um, it was a big thing. Because here's what I say: uh, nobody wants to be a rat or a snitch, right? What did I say the other day? It's not only what you learn. No, it's we were taught at a young age. You don't say a word. Keep your mouth shut. Wait till you get a lawyer, which I did. But we're also taught that was the drug dealing. My mentors taught me. But go back to when you're in first grade and you get in trouble in the playground, and the one kid says to the other kid, "Don't tattletale on me." I mean, or "Don't rat," or "Don't snitch." I mean, it's ingrained in us as part of our societal upbringing. Look at this poor guy that got shot, and then the poor kid who's obviously mentally deranged who shot him. And now people are yelling at the McDonald's worker for turning in a murderer. They're calling him a snitch. And what's their favorite line? "Snitches get stitches." I've seen that a lot in the comments about my when I do a podcast. So
Yeah.
yeah. everybody's brave until they're looking at 25 years. But anyway, as you were saying.
How are your feelings on how the war on drugs has changed since they have began to start feeling comfortable with legalization across the nation?
The war's still on. I mean, 250,000 Americans were arrested for cannabis last year, 92% for simple possession. That means they had to go to court, get a lawyer, maybe lose their job or lose their opportunity to get a certain job because they have a felony conviction, or, the war is still going on. It's the longest running war in American history, and it cost $1 trillion, and it's against its own people. So, but luckily, marijuana has been, legalized in some form or another in 39 states. If you add in THCA, you're probably in most of the states. And thank God. When I was a kid, you could go to jail for a year for a joint. I'm and even when I was working for the DEA, I heard DEA agents say nobody should go to jail for marijuana. I heard prosecutors say nobody should go to jail for marijuana. But let's be honest, the war on drugs, especially going back not all the way to 1930, but 1970s, the second iteration with Nixon, nobody liked this more than the politicians, the cops, and the lawyers.
Exactly, exactly,
It's a
100%.
bullshit war. And but thank God, as far as marijuana is concerned, you know, hopefully nobody's, I had a lot of people killed in my life and die trying to bring marijuana and deal with it.
Your book goes into that, and you actually lived a very, very exciting but scary and tragic life
Yeah.
all at the same time. So, what was the biggest motivation for writing your amazing life story, and what do you really want readers to take away from this?
So, good point. The name of the book is called One Step Over the Line, Confessions of a Marijuana Mercenary. And funny, one of my big pod guys and we came up with that. So I said, you know what? I'm stealing that. I'm using it for the cover of the book. One Step Over the Line goes back to when I was a kid in my 20s, when I was still just in the infancy of this stuff, but still well into it. Already smuggled drugs out of the country, already smuggled money, done, you know. I said, man, there was a song out at that time called One Step Over the Line, Sweet Jesus. There's another one called I'm sorry, One Toke Over the Line. One Step's another one. It was called One Toke Over the Line, Sweet Jesus. And I said, that'd be a good title for like, I kind of realized that's all I did. The book goes about my life, but also a bunch of kids growing up in South Florida in the 70s, how we were all middle income, average kids that just got sucked into a war on drugs because it exploded under our feet. And that's what the book's about. It's about me, my story, but also about a story about inner youth, inner city incarceration of Black and brown youth. I go into a lot, but the reason I wrote the book was I wanted to tell the story of how the West was won. I wanted to tell people today what it was like, to have, planes and, coming in with weed and the risk involved and what we did. And I don't want it to go like swept under the rug, especially again, the war is unjust. The war on drugs is a war on America's own people. But that's what the book is, why I wrote the book. First off, my one step over the line. In the last chapter is two steps back, where I go into, what I should have done years ago is take two
Versus
steps
what
back.
actually happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I had this stupid German work ethic of you got to work and we're going to work harder and we're going to work harder and we're going to succeed. When a lot of the smarter people went to college, we were going to quit when we were 18. Everybody thought we'll sell drugs. And because at 18 or less, you go to juvie and you go to Sheriff Boys Ranch, not Rayford Prison. I just forgot to quit at 18 along with a lot of my friends. So.
Yeah.
And what was the last part of the question? I'm sorry. Or was that it?
Um, so what is the main thing that you want readers to take
Well,
away from this?
right, that was it. That how the West was won. One of my big smuggling friends said they should name it "How the Weed Was Won," And that's relevant, you know. There's a great book out that from a friend of mine, Tommy Powell, called Reefer. And if you read that book, he started in Colombia in 1969, bringing loads of weed out before anybody did. So it's you know, he tells the story before the second generation of smugglers in the 70s and 80s. Yeah, so you know, it was you really could go to jail for a joint for a year back then.
Believe me, I'm actually Virginian, and it's like that here too. And
Yes.
really, even though Virginia was the first state to actually legalize, it still really hasn't changed much. And for me, Chapter 10 was absolutely fantastic.
Good.
You actually
I'm
do
glad
a
you like that.
Yes, I did. You actually did a good deep dive into the harsh truth of racism.
Yeah.
Um, so why do you feel that we should no longer call it marijuana and it should be called cannabis?
Right. So, and by the way, that chapter means so much to me, and
It was
so.
fantastic.
And thank you for saying that. And it's incongruent with the rest of the book. You could take it out and nobody would know because it's not about cannabis, but it was a thing that shaped my life, and I hope everybody gets a chance to get the book and take to heart chapter 10. And it was a horrible thing. And you know, that's the thing. You and I know marijuana is a made up word. It was a word made up by the government to go after the Mexicans and you know the marijuana tax. And you know, there's when I try to explain to people, there's two things: cannabis and hemp. And cannabis is either indica or sativa. Weed, pot, ganja, that's all great, but that's not the technical term. Um, Look, you know, I just wish that I wish the stigma went away. By the way, when I was a kid, if they never made marijuana illegal, the first thing I did was drink this horrible wine called Boone's Farm that all the kids drank. And then we had
Night Train was mine. It was
yeah,
awful.
and then there was also MD 20 Mad Dog 2020 and
Yeah.
yeah, so exactly. And I hated it. But then someone said, try some pot, which I liked it, but we were smoking it because it was forbidden fruit. If you take marijuana out of Schedule 1, and they're doing it now, a lot of the kids these days don't have any interest in smoking pot because it's not cool anymore. You know, I've had people tell me when they hear about my book, they go, "Oh, all you smuggled was marijuana." I go, "No, cocaine too." They go, "Ah,
Ah, there
good."
we go.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'd like to see the stigma taken away and not even look, even where it's legal, I'll still walk away and I'll smoke somewhere. You know, like I was in New York City the other day. You smoke, I didn't want to smoke right in front of anywhere. And people go, look at that guy. You know, you try to go around it. I'm an old guy. We still used to hiding it, doing it discreetly.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, it shouldn't be considered anything more. It's not, nobody ever beat up their wife or their children or their best friend because they got too stoned. You know, they drink alcohol is the horrible ramifications and people can't come off it, you know, come off the chain on it. You know, I always say the only time anybody would get angry is if the chocolate chip cookies aren't warm enough and the milk's not cold enough. You know, smoking marijuana is very chilling,
What
you
was
know.
one of the most intense moments you had while you were undercover?
Well, I mean, the one time we did this bust and it just went on for like 2 days, and I was wired up, and we had a caravan of police and going through several counties in the state. But I think the one that probably looking back was the one when I went down to Jamaica to set up a Jamaican smuggler for a load of weed. I had set up a guy I knew. Let me just say, I never busted anybody I grew up with or anybody um, that I never testified in court against anybody I ever grew up with. I didn't. I even called from jail and told the guy with the biggest mouth, my right hand man, tell everybody not to do business with me. And when the government came to me and wanted me to proffer, which means tell them everything I ever did with anybody I ever did it with, I said I wouldn't do it, and they backed off. I'm not saying I didn't do what I did, and there's no justification. I don't feel good about turning other people in and putting them in the same position that I'm now in. But this one point, a guy came to me, and we had known each other, but never did a drug deal. And he goes, I have 125 pounds I want to sell. I said, listen, I'm kind of working for the cops. He goes, oh, I don't care. Now what? He goes, oh yeah, I've done that. I know he just got out of jail. And I go, no, listen to me. I'm going to work with the cops. Great. So what am I going to do now? Is this guy working with the cops too? And are they testing me? You're in a little bit of a lot of different places when you're doing this. So he got busted. He set up his Jamaican connection. I fly to Jamaica to set up the Jamaican connection. And I went undeclared. And what that means is if you're an agent of the US government, you have to declare yourself going into a foreign country. And there's a lot, people get arrested. There's a lot of Americans arrested around the world, and they say they're being held unfairly. There are times, I'm sure, where these are agents of the American government not declaring themselves. I went down there and I went undeclared because they didn't want to tell anybody that who I was, because everybody will bribe somebody and know, it's dangerous to go declared, right? And go undercover, so to speak. So I go down there and I finally took days. I had to meet with the DEA, and this dumbass had me meet him in his Range Rover. And I'm in Kingston, Jamaica, one of the most dangerous cities in the world. And Jamaica, guns are illegal. That you can go to jail for life for a bullet or a gun. So how they kill you is they invite you to a machete party. And you may not go willingly, but that's when 2 or 3 guys take you into a field and they hack you to death with a machete. So needless to say, I in my hotel room, and the guy shows up eventually, and somehow he made me. He either heard me talking on the phone, saw me with the DEA. He starts just yelling at me, "You're a bad man. You're a bad man." And I'm saying, "No, no." He knocked on my door. We started getting a confrontation. I said to him, listen, I've been waiting for you. I have connections in the grill. I'm going to go load the plane somewhere else. What the hell's going on? And he kept saying, "You're a bad man. You know what happens to you in places like this." And he leaves. So I go, this is the shorter story. I go into the hotel, call the DEA. The DEA, I tell him, I think I can save it. I think I can get this guy back, and I'll go out to the field and I'll get the load. And the DEA just went, "No way. There's no way we're risking you in an operation. You're coming home. Go out to the bar." And the hotel was like a tropical hotel with a tropical bar in the middle. And the bar was basically right outside my room, and sit at the bar. And I've been there for days. I thought by myself. I go out and I sit at the edge of the bar, and there's a young, younger looking, good looking black Jamaican couple, Jamaican, and they're dressed really nice, and they're drinking what we call in Jamaica Itol drinks. Itol means no alcohol. It's like pure. No, no, they don't eat pig. So if you're a vegetarian, you're clean eating, you're Itol. So I see them drinking 2 Itol drinks, and I go, and the one looks, and oh, so when I had first met my DEA handler, he told me his undercover name was Captain Bobby, and he says to me, "I'm Captain Bobby, and you're now Kilo Bravo." And remember that, like Kilo Bravo. So Ken Behr, KB. So the guy looks over at me, he goes, "Go get your bag. We're leaving." And I don't know who this guy is. I'm just looking at him. And I have the special smuggling bag I still have that has secret compartments for money and drugs, which I had none on me at that time, but my secret trusty travel bag. And he says, "Go get," and finally he looks at me and goes, "Kilo Bravo, go get your suitcase. We're leaving." And as soon as he said Kilo Bravo, I knew that he was with me. I'll never been from the bar to the seat on a plane, as I say, any faster. All I know is 1 minute I had my suitcase, the next minute I was driving like a madman through Jamaica, pulling up to the airport, running through the airport, badging through customs, and on a plane. And I
Wow.
go, wow. So, and I got home, and my wife pulled up in the car, and I hated to leave my daughter and my wife and go to some place that I know I may not come home from. And there was my daughter sitting in the car seat in the back. "Daddy, daddy, daddy." She's a year and a half old, or 2 years old at the time, maybe a little more. I got busted at a year and a half, so maybe she was a couple months older now, and two and a half. And I did my job, I got credit for it. I was glad I didn't look. In the end, I didn't bust anybody, which I was glad about. I got my dad a boy because I gave it a shot. but I could, it could have went really fast the other way.
Oh yes, definitely. Now, do you ever worry about anybody seeking retribution or
Not since I've been doing all these podcasts now. Now I like to end with, "Hey, I was only kidding,
I was
guys.
only
Don't be."
playing. It was
Uh,
just a
yeah,
joke. But
yeah.
anyway,
So it's been 32 years, and virtually everybody we busted would rolled within seconds. I don't mean they went to the courthouse to the arrest, to the DEA headquarters or the police headquarters, and their lawyers showed up. I mean, as they're going down, they're yelling, "Don't shoot, don't shoot. I'll cooperate. I'll tell you everything." So I knew that they couldn't be, they're not coming after me. They did the same. And most everybody does the same again. Like the prisoner said in the beginning, everybody's a snitch. There was one big bust we did in Canada where it was 10,000 kilos of cocaine. And from what I was told, the Hells Angels, the Italian mob, the Irish mob were all involved, and it was a reverse sting. So we were selling it to them. But I didn't, I was at that point, they would just bring me in again. Why did they bring me in? They wanted to send somebody into Canada to keep, to be on the other side of the border when they were in America. And they wanted to send somebody undeclared. So they sent me. But at that point, I was just a pawn the DEA was using. I didn't know anybody. I never met anybody. I didn't rat anybody else out. So I I'll say this though. I've never been comfortable with it. I'm not happy with it now. I would hope to God I would never do anything like that again. It goes against everything I know from being a kid and growing up on a farm. And as I say, the cowboy way, if you don't lie, you don't steal, you don't cheat, you don't take another man's horse, you don't shoot a man in the back. Those are all those things we grew up on the Westerns. Nowhere was it say, and by the way, if you get busted with, for an ongoing criminal enterprise, don't rat. But as far as, see, most of us get it. My partner finally found me after 32 years. He was my best friend. And listen to what they did to him. He was selling weed and he had a big house, on a private piece of land with his family, like a compound with his mom and dad owned the land. He built a house on it. They had a barn, and on the barn they had weed. When they busted him, they said, "Listen, we're going to take your father's and mother's home. We're going to take your home. We're going to take all the property. We're going to put your father and mother in jail. We're going to put your wife in jail. Your four kids are going to be orphans." They had him handcuffed on his couch in his underwear in front of his four kids and his wife and his parents, all going to jail. You either talk now or we're flushing your whole family down the toilet for marijuana. And so he ratted me out.
Terry,
Can I
right?
blame him? I can't blame him. I'm glad he did because I got out and we both turned our lives around. So I'm not mad at anybody. I know him and I were talking the other day, and we looking back, which you don't see when you're in the middle of it. Like when I raced cars, 35 cars go out. I'm not going to be the guy that catches on fire or breaks my legs. You believe it's never going to happen to you. Or how do you get in the race car? How do you go out there on a runway with a machine gun, hand grenades, with a plane coming in with a load of drugs that if you get caught, you're going 15 to 20 years. It's not going to happen to us. I'm going to get away. And what my partner said the other day to me was interesting. He goes, "Looking back, we didn't know what was guaranteed to happen. You're going to get robbed. Both of him and I independently were robbed and tied up and robbed at gunpoint. You're going to get busted. We both got busted. You might get killed or kidnapped, but rarely is it going to end where you get this." Now, I do have friends of mine that got busted, didn't do any time, changed their lives around. I have friends that made millions of dollars and, have lived happily ever after. But I can tell you, out of the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people who down here sold drugs, I might know two people that never got busted and went on with their lives, maybe a handful. But the big guys, maybe two. So, and God bless them.
Oh
And
yeah.
I have friends to this day that have done 30 years, 27 years, 22 years, 10 years. My other co-defendant did 10 years, got out, got back into something, and I heard he's back on the run. Destroying lives, man. So let me just say, freedomgrow.org is a charity that I'm heavily involved in. We take care of nonviolent cannabis prisoners, some of them doing 30 years in life to this day. The war still goes on. How does somebody doing 30 years or life for cannabis? So freedomgrow.org donates tons of resources to these prisoners. When they get out, we give them $420. If it's Christmas time, we take care of the kids. We try to going back to school time. We raise money and we use the money to buy book bags, clothes. If you're in jail and you want to send your kid a Christmas card, you can't send them a gift. What do? You have to pay somebody to draw a card up. Or find something in commissary. There's not much you can do to help connect to your kids. So what are you doing? It's in the worst possible way. You're building another generation of criminals because they look at their dad, their cousin, their uncle, and they assume being in jail is just part of the lexicon of these kids' lives because it's the lexicon of their lives. So please, everybody that can donate to freedomgrow.org, everything sold from now to January 1st from my website, my website, onestepovertheline.com, or from Amazon, Kindle, Audible. I did the Audible book myself. I'll donate all the profits to Freedom Grow.
That is fantastic. So, are you working on anything else, and what can we expect from you in the future?
Yeah, well, I have my website. I have my Marijuana Mercenary swag and stuff.
Love it.
Yeah, we're trying to get an affiliate program going right now for CBD and CBD products and for THCA products that will probably be running through my website. I have two, obviously I'm connected to a lot of farms and grows and other products. Still in the game, still got my pinky in there. And I'm working on my own podcast now. It's called One Step Over the Line. And I'll be interviewing to start out what I call the Marijuana Mercenary series. So once it all gets up there, you'll be able to go on and hear stories from the biggest smugglers of those days. Smugglers that one friend of mine brought in 350,000 pounds up the Mississippi, 20 tractor trailers. They had to scuttle the boat with 35,000 pounds on it because they were out of tractor trailers. And other friends of mine that were some of the biggest smugglers in the world will be on there from those yesteryears. But the One Step Over the Line it's a story of the podcast will be a human nature podcast. Everybody I say is in the back of the book, show me someone without skeletons in their closet and I'll show you a liar or a life unlived. Now, hopefully there are some people without skeletons in their closet, but I want the ones with the skeletons to come on my show. Or you could be Mark Zuckerberg, who foolishly quit Harvard and a good education to start this Facebook stuff.
Hey,
so still a story.
And it definitely worked out for him. But Ken, thank you so much for your time. And once again, it is a fantastic work of art, really. And I like how it goes back and forth, and it's just brilliantly done. Once again, until next time, everyone, stay lifted.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Big Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
Debbie Fazy with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today, and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Elena Pinto, delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast, PCM TV's weekly roundup of industry news from California to New York. I'm Elena Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. Get your cannabis news fix with Pro Cannabis Media. We're here to keep you informed and entertained. Stay tuned and stay lifted.